Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, a man armed with a rifle and a handgun stormed a medical office building on Wednesday, killing 4 people, wounding others before turning the gun on himself. Police have not identified the shooter. They said the attack was not random, but are withholding other details. Michelle Nathan witnessed the aftermath of the assault.
I was coming to the doctor, and I got my grandkids with me in this terrible scene. It's awful. It's sad. My daughter-in-law is from Buffalo, so now it's so close to home. It's not even safe if you come outside anymore, you know. My prayers go out to everyone that's in that building. According to the Gun Violence Archive, the Tulsa attack was the 233rd mass shooting since January 1st. There have been at least 20 mass shootings since last week's massacre of 21 people at the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. In Buffalo, New York, a white man accused of murdering 10 black people in a supermarket May 14th was indicted Wednesday on 25 counts, including domestic terrorism and murder as a hate crime. Prosecutors say the 18-year-old was radicalized through online forums such as 4chan, authored a racist manifesto, live-streamed his shooting spree. If convicted, the white supremacist gunman will face an automatic sentence of life in prison without parole. In Uvalde, Texas, hundreds of mourners gathered Wednesday for the funeral of Irma and Joe Garcia. Irma was killed alongside another teacher and 19 fourth graders last week at Robb Elementary School by a teenage gunman with an assault rifle. 2 days after her murder, her husband, Joe, died of a fatal heart attack. They're survived by 4 children. The funeral came as public anger mounted over the response of police who waited over an hour to enter the classroom where the massacre took place. On Wednesday, it emerged that the Uvalde School District Police Chief, Pete Arredondo, the incident commander, told a team of Border Patrol officers not to enter the classroom where the gunman killed 21 people. The officers eventually defied the order, engaging and killing the gunman. The Texas Department of Public Safety says Arredondo is refusing to cooperate with its investigation, but Arredondo told CNN he'll talk about the massacre when, quote, families quit grieving. In Austin, Texas, Governor Greg Abbott is resisting demands by state Democrats that he convene a special legislative session to tackle gun violence. Abbott called Wednesday instead for the formation of a special legislative committee. The Texas State Teachers Association blasted the move, writing in a statement, "Committees and other groups have studied school safety before, and schools obviously aren't safe from mass shooters. This is because the governor and legislators refuse to address the real issue and enact reasonable gun laws to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them," they said. Meanwhile, a bipartisan group of 9 U.S. senators met Wednesday to discuss new legislation in the wake of the Uvalde massacre. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky said he hoped lawmakers would target what he called the source of U.S. mass shootings.
It seems to me there are 2 broad categories that underscore the problem: mental illness and school safety.
He did not mention guns as a source of mass shootings. Ukraine says Russian forces have taken over most of Severodonetsk, the last major city under Ukrainian control in the Luhansk region. The city's fall to Russia comes as the United Nations warns the invasion of Ukraine has caused the deaths of at least 2 children every day, with many more injured. On Thursday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky admitted Russia's killing up to 100 Ukrainian soldiers a day, with another 500 wounded daily. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports hundreds of Russian soldiers have escaped the fighting in Ukraine or refused to take part during the early stages of the war. On Wednesday, the Biden administration announced another $700 million worth of military aid to Ukraine, including the delivery of advanced rocket launchers and more Javelin anti-tank missiles. Meanwhile, Reuters reports the administration's considering a plan to sell armed attack drones to Ukraine. This comes as about 1,000 Russian troops held nuclear weapons drills northeast of Moscow on Wednesday. We'll have the latest on Ukraine after headlines. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces shot and killed 31-year-old Palestinian journalist Gufran Harun Hararasna on Wednesday as she commuted to her new job at a radio station in the city of Hebron. The Israeli army claims she was holding a knife, but eyewitnesses disputed the army's description of what happened. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry accused Israel of carrying out an execution. This comes just 3 weeks after the Israeli military shot dead the Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. Israeli forces also killed 2 more Palestinians in the West Bank over the past 24 hours and demolished the home of a Palestinian man accused by Israel of terrorism. This week, 15 U.S. House Democrats wrote a letter to Secretary of State Antony Blinken urging him to stop the Israeli government's planned expulsion of Palestinians from the massacre villages in the occupied West Bank, arguing the expulsions would be a violation of the Geneva Convention and would amount to a war crime. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control is investigating a case of suspected monkeypox in Georgia, the 18th such case in the U.S. this year. It's one of 550 cases seen across 30 countries detected around the globe this year. On Wednesday, the World Health Organization said the virus has likely been spreading undetected for some time outside of West and Central Africa, where the disease has large animal reservoirs. This is WHO Emergencies Director Mike Ryan.
There are thousands and thousands of cases of monkeypox every year in Africa, and there are deaths every year. And our concern now is real. We have a concern about this disease spreading in Europe. But I certainly didn't hear that same level of concern over the last 5 or 10 years. So I think this is a lesson. These diseases will continue to emerge. They will continue to pressure. They will continue to cross the species barrier. The question is, are we in a position to collectively respond? Are we in a position to share resources in order to stop onward transmission of these diseases within human communities?
White House COVID-19 coordinator Dr. Ashish Jha is warning the United States faces new waves of unnecessary deaths unless Congress approves new funding to fight the coronavirus. Republicans have refused to back a $10 billion compromise COVID funding bill, down from more than $20 billion, demanding the Biden administration keep in place a Trump-era ban on asylum claims at the U.S.-Mexico border. On Wednesday, Pfizer and BioNTech finalized an application to the FDA for emergency use of a 3-dose COVID vaccine for children under age 5. FDA advisors are scheduled to meet June 15th to discuss the plan. Meanwhile, new data shows deaths among seniors 65 and older soared during the winter wave of Omicron infections after the virus evolved new ways to circumvent immunity from vaccinations and prior infections. President Biden admitted Wednesday he was not aware of how great an impact the Abbott plant shutdown in February would have on infant formula supplies until April. In a White House meeting with the country's largest infant formula manufacturers yesterday, except Abbott, spokespersons from 2 manufacturers explicitly said they'd recognized from the start how huge a problem the formula shortage would eventually become when Abbott closed one of its plants in February. A whistleblower sent a 34-page report to the Food and Drug Administration last October, alleging unsanitary conditions at the Abbott factory, but it took over 4 months for the FDA to take action. In this time, 1 infant died from contaminated formula, another 2 were hospitalized, a second infant died from tainted formula in late February. The Justice Department has stepped up its criminal investigation into the creation of fake slates of pro-Trump electors looking to overturn Joe Biden's presidential victory in 2020. That's according to the New York Times, which reports the probe has a particular focus on the team of lawyers that worked on behalf of Trump, including John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani. Meanwhile, a newly surfaced recording of Republican Party operatives meeting with grassroots activists last October reveals a multi-pronged GOP strategy to target and potentially overturn votes in Democratic precincts around the country. In the recording obtained by Politico, a Republican National Committee staffer outlines a plan to train and install volunteers to challenge voters at Democratic majority polling places. Matthew Seyfried, the RNC's election integrity director for Michigan, also said Republicans are setting up a network of party-friendly district attorneys who could intervene to block vote counts at certain precincts.
Truly, it's going to be an army, right? We are going to try to recruit lawyers. We're going to have more lawyers than have ever been recruited, because let's be honest, that's where it's going to be fought, right?
The Department of Education said Wednesday it will cancel $5.8 billion in student loan debt for borrowers who attended the now-defunct network of for-profit schools known as Corinthian colleges. It's the largest one-time discharge of debt ever made by the Department of Education. A report by the legal organization, the Project on Predatory Student Lending, found for-profit schools, quote, systematically targets prospective Black and Latinx students, encourage them to take out federal student loans, and leave students with a worthless degree and debt that they are unable to repay, unquote. In Florida, abortion providers have filed suit to block a new law banning abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The Center for Reproductive Rights said in a statement, quote, the Florida Supreme Court has long held their state constitution protects the right to end a pregnancy. That means even if Roe fails, abortion should remain protected in Florida, and this ban should be unblocked, unquote. Barring a court injunction, Florida's 15-week abortion ban is set to take effect on July 1st. A jury has decided in favor of actor Johnny Depp in a defamation suit against his ex-spouse, actor Amber Heard, awarding him $10 million in damages. The jury also found in favor of Heard in a countersuit she'd filed against Depp, saying his legal team falsely accused her of fabricating claims, awarding her $2 million. A major component of the case was an op-ed Heard wrote about her experience with intimate partner violence, published in the Washington Post in 2018 at the height of the Me Too movement. Activist Tarana Burke's Me Too movement organization has issued a statement acknowledging the, quote, mockery of assault, shame, and blame, unquote, over the weeks of the trial, calling it a toxic catastrophe and one of the biggest defamations of the movement. And a warning to our audience, this last headline contains graphic footage and descriptions of police violence. In Brazil, protesters are demanding justice for Genivaldo Jesus Santos, a Black man diagnosed with schizophrenia who was killed by federal police in the city of Umbaúba on May 25th. Video of the incident shows a pair of officers trapping Santos inside a vehicle after releasing a tear gas canister inside. A medical examiner later determined he died of asphyxia. On Wednesday, hundreds of protesters marched through Sao Paulo demanding justice.
Genivaldo foi torturado.
Genivaldo was tortured for a crime he did not commit. A Black man with mental health issues. The family begged for his life, but they were not heard.
Many Brazilians are comparing the death of Genivaldo Jesus Santos to the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, which took place exactly 2 years ago. Santos's killing came just days after police killed at least 25 people during a raid on a favela in Rio de Janeiro. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Nermeen Sheikh. Hi, Nermeen.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.